The Getaway is a 1972 film that was actually based on a 1958 novel by Jim Thompson. This one was directed by Sam Peckinpah. Seems like we've been on a kick of Sam Peckinpah stuff lately. And the screenplay was actually written by Walter Hill. It stars Steve McQueen, Ali MacGraw, Ben Johnson, Al Lettieri, and Sally Struthers. The story follows an imprisoned master robber named Doc McCoy, who's played by Steve McQueen, and his wife, Carol, who's played by Ali MacGraw, as he arranges his release on a condition that he rob a bank in Texas. They get double-crossed in the crime, and the McCoys are forced to flee to Mexico with everybody, including the police and criminals, in hot pursuit of them. Now, the very beginning opening scenes at the prison are filmed in Huntsville, Texas, and those prisoners that you see in the courtyards and in passing are actual convicts. Initially, Paramount Studios was going to produce the film, but there was a problem concerning the film's budget. Paramount decided to let somebody else do the production, and they would own the rights to it. They were inundated for offers with this, and they accepted one from First Artist Group. They accepted this because Steve McQueen would receive no upfront salary. He just got 10% of the gross receipts from the first dollar taken in of the film. And this could be a lot of money if the film was a box office hit. Steve McQueen had been encouraging his publicist, David W. Foster, to become a film producer. This initially was tried with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where they tried to have Paul Newman and Steve McQueen work together. But 20th Century Fox didn't want Foster, his publicist, in on the deal. So the project fell apart. His publicist acquired the rights to the novel, The Getaway, and he sent a copy of the book to Steve McQueen and urged him to do it. Steve had been looking for the kind of good guy, bad guy role. The film was actually rated PG in the United States. A few years later, in retrospect, though, this was considered a mistake. The board believed that they should have rated it higher and made it an R. The movie originally was supposed to be directed by Peter Bogdanovich, and it was also supposed to star his then-girlfriend, Sybil Shepherd. Steve McQueen actually screened Bogdanovich's soon-to-be-released The Last Picture Show from 1971, and he loved it, and a deal was made. The only problem was that Warner Brothers had approached Bogdanovich with an offer to direct What's Up, Doc? Of 1972, with the stipulation that he start doing it right away. The director really wanted to do both of them, but the studio said no. When Steve McQueen found out, he was very upset, and he told Bogdanovich that he was going to go someplace else to get somebody to direct. That's when Steve turned to Sam Peckinpah. They had worked together on the film Junior Bonner earlier and had a great relationship. The only problem, nobody went to see the film. They had created a film that was gentle, intimate, and actually character-driven. The only problem was nobody wanted to view it. Now, initially, Farrah Fawcett was actually considered for the role of Carol McCoy, Steve McQueen's wife. And when Sam Peckinpah took over the film, he intended for the female lead to be Diane Cannon. But then he changed his mind in favor of Ali MacGraw. The train station scenes were actually filmed in a former Southern Pacific Sunset station in San Antonio. Amtrak moved to a smaller station in 1998 as the building fell into a state of disrepair, but it has now been restored into an entertainment complex. The railroad passenger cars used in the film were former Southern Pacific coaches being operated by Amtrak, as the railroad was less than a year old and had not yet changed the outside markings on its rolling stock. Despite being third billed and having a co-starring billing, Ben Johnson only had a handful of scenes. His character was extremely important in this film, but his scenes had his character practically just doing monologues. Now, there's all sorts of little hints that Peckinpah leaves in this film. The character of Rudy, who is chasing Steve McQueen and his wife, they hint that he's going to be really bad luck early on in the film. When they're in the Riverwalk, his pedal boat number is actually number 13. And then later on, he plays with a black cat in several points in the film. His part is played by Al Lettieri, and he plays a really bad guy, but he also plays an important role that same year in The Godfather. He's the main antagonist of the mafia family. Now, Walter Hill wrote the screenplay for this movie, and they stick a little Easter egg in to let you know that he did. In the background, numerous times they have a radio station playing, but one particular time at the drive-in restaurant, the call letters of the radio station are given out. And those letters are WHIL, which means Walter Hill. It's just an abbreviation for his name. So that's kind of a little hidden Easter egg for you. Now, Steve McQueen had a real knack for using props, especially weapons like the ones used in the film. You can actually see his military training in his films. He was so brisk and confident, especially handling that pump shotgun. Now, there was kind of a perfect storm brewing on the set of this film. It's said that Sam Peckinpah was drinking quite a bit. He always thought that he directed better when he drank. So you combine that with Steve McQueen's pompous attitude, and you've got problems. Like I said earlier, they got along originally in their first film, but there were some trying times in this film. You see, Steve McQueen had final cut in this film, and Sam Peckinpah didn't know that initially. When he found out, he was really upset. This allowed Steve McQueen to make all the cuts that made him look good, but not necessarily make the movie better. It's said that Sam Peckinpah and Steve McQueen got into so many heated arguments during the filming that it was commonplace. One night, Steve McQueen actually picked up a huge champagne bottle and threw it at him. He ducked and it stuck in the wall behind him. Steve McQueen just laughed about it. Now, there's actually a discrepancy between Steve McQueen's being the ultimate cool guy and his real-life performance as an uncompromising jerk. He's often been called a near monster. Now, at the time, Ally McGraw was married to Robert Evans, the head of Paramount Studios, and he was actually involved in getting her the role on the film. It's said that Ally McGraw was kind of scared of Steve McQueen at first, and also of Peckinpah, because they had reputations as wild, two-fisted beer guzzlers. McQueen and McGraw experienced a strong, instant attraction. She stated that she was just overwhelmingly attracted to him. They began having an affair during the production of the movie. She would eventually leave her husband and become Steve McQueen's second wife. Robert Evans, Ally McGraw's husband, was just livid over this affair. He felt like it was just being thrown in his face and that everybody knew about it except for him. He threatened to pull his wife out of the film and take her home. Steve McQueen definitely has a dark side to him. Ally McGraw got tired of him because he basically kept her confined, wouldn't let her continue with her career at all while they were married. It's also said that he was physically and emotionally abusive. And you can actually see the physical side of this in the film. Now, granted, this is before they're ever married. In the scene where they're standing out in front of the car, he suddenly slaps her, and that was actually unscripted. He hits her a few times. This wasn't in the script, and you can see Ally McGraw's shocked reaction. She doesn't know how to respond. She almost loses her lines. Whether it's the cool or the brutal side of Steve McQueen that history decides to record, the fact is There's definitely two sides to this man. Great actor, just not so good on the home front. The film had 2 preview screenings. One of them was not very good in San Francisco, but then there was a much better one in San Jose, California. The film actually grossed almost $19 million by the end of 1973, and it went on to be the 8th highest grossing film of that year. Now, as an eerie close to the film, you see Steve McQueen's character drive off near Juarez, Mexico. A few years later, he passed away not far from this same city. Take a look at The Getaway again. You might enjoy it. It will probably bring back some memories. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.